Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Circling the Dream. Today we're going to be talking to Julian Slater, a great guy. He is originally from the UK, but now works exclusively out of the US. He's a sound professional who covers more than one base.
I'm a Swiss Army knife.
He's been at it for over 30 years, but it doesn't seem to get any easier.
Every movie, I get nervous and a little bit panicky.
He perfectly describes the magic when the whole thing comes together,
That's like lightning in a bottle.
and also what that magic project was.
For me, my career will always be before and after Baby Driver.
He talks about his sound heroes.
I've been meaning to, he doesn't know me, but I feel like emailing him and just saying, you don't know me, but any chance we can meet up.
And those that he doesn't really want to work with.
I don't want to work with someone who's amazing but an asshole.
The best bits of advice he's been given,
Don't worry about it until it happens.
and what those closest say to him if it does happen.
My wife says I suffer from open mouth before engaged brain syndrome.
So let's get started and see how we get on.
What was the question?
Well, that was a good start. Here we go. Hope you enjoy it.
You're getting younger every year. What's going on there?
Made a deal with the devil.
Can you put me in touch?
Fasting. 16/8 fasting.
Send me a link. Definitely.
I'll send you a link.
Shall we pile in? Because I know you're a busy boy.
Sure.
So maybe you could just describe what you do and what job title you go by.
There's a few little hats I wear. Essentially, sound designer, supervising sound editor, re-recording mixer. Sometimes it's all three on a particular movie. Sometimes it's two, sometimes it's one. So it all depends. Sound designer is, sitting at the Pro Tools like I am now, coming up with weird and wonderful sounds, or not, if I'm struggling. Supervising sound editor is running the team of sound editors and kind of helping pull the creative vision from the director out of his or her head, and getting that onto the screen. That's a twofold role. That's running the budget and the creative side. So and then there's re-recording mixer, which is you can sit on the left hand side of the desk and do dialogue and music, which is what I tend to do now, or you can sit on the right hand side of the desk. This is traditionally, I mean, there is no set rules, and do the effects and the Foley. And I do that. But also I also do dialogue and music. I also do effects and music on shows where they are like, Baby Driver, where it's kind of entwined together. So
Quite unusual though to cross over so many.
yeah, I know. I really like doing the dialogue. There's a show coming up possibly where I'll be involved with the design of it. And then I go over to the left-hand side to do dialogue and music, which is great because I'm kind of across everything and I can be involved in everything. So, which is how I ideally like to do it. But if I'm just the re-recording mixer, then so be it. And I'll do, I then totally lose my supervisor head and, very happy not to supervise and just, be part of the mixing crew.
But a mixer who's been a sound supervisor and a sound designer must be a very fussy customer now.
That's a matter of opinion, John, right? I mean, the thing one has to remember when you're in that role, people work differently. Right? I mean, people work differently to how I work as a sound supervisor, and I totally respect that. And that, my job as a mixer, I do like to think as a mixer, I draw on my experiences as a sound supervisor, working with great mixers and perhaps not so great mixers. And I try and be, learn from those experiences and put it into when I'm mixing. So I'm there to support the sound supervisor and to help them,
Circling the Dream.
Cool. So how long have you been doing this? How long have you been in the sound industry?
Since I was coming up for 30 years.
Wow.
Actually. And so, I'm now I've been referred to as a veteran, which pisses me off, to be honest with you.
Does that mean you get
Um,
free food in cafes in America?
No, wheelchair access. I wanted to get into music, and I went to the School of Audio Engineering in London.
So did I.
Right. Oh, there you go. Yeah,
That was the one just up from King's Cross, was it?
that's right. Yeah.
Hmm.
I did the part-time. It was like 2 hours or 4 hours twice a week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
At the end of it, they do a work placement, and I got to work at De Wolf Music in the transfer bay for 2 weeks. And at the end, they said, if you want a job, come and work here. So I did. Took over the sound effects department there. Then met the Hackenbacker guys, which was then Nigel Heath and Steve Felton, and they asked me to come and join them. And then within 2 years, like by the time I was 21, Steve Felton had left, and I became a partner there. So at 20, I literally went from, leaving school at 16, going to a part-time course in sound engineering and being part of a business where I think it's fair to say neither of us had an idea about how to run a business. We just wanted to do sound.
Yeah, but you did a cracking job of doing sound,
Yeah. And the rest is history.
A book will be written one day, I'm sure. So, I mean, were you clear when you went to college, or or even when you left college, were you clear about what role you wanted in sound?
No, I knew I wanted to be in sound. I thought I wanted to be in music.
Yeah.
It's been documented in quite a few interviews now. There was a moment when I was like 7 or 8 or 9 when I saw the video for The Police, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic.
Okay.
And they're at Montserrat, and they're on that mixing desk. And I was like, that looks so cool. And it literally was a seminal moment. And also, I grew up with the Sony Walkman, the first, you could literally put on a pair of headphones and listen in bed and listen to music. And I was so driven by music. But then I also saw the documentary about how sound was done. And there was, Ben Burt doing the whole, spanner on the pylon. So I knew I wanted to get into sound. And in fact, I remember my careers officer, because I come from a little provincial town in East Anglia. And he said, look, to the class, whatever it is you want to do, tell me, let's explore your dreams. And when I said I wanted to get into, music engineering, he said, I can't really help with that, but I can get you down at Barclays for 2 weeks work experience. So it just wasn't a thing. But I always knew, and I'm glad I ended up in this side, because obviously the music industry collapsed in the 80s. I was drawn to sound, very much some kind of sonic thing, and I'm useless at everything else, so it's just as well.
So look, you moved from the UK to the US, what, 6 or 7 years ago?
Coming up for 8 in July.
Wow. What was, first of all, what was the reason for doing it?
I wanted to come out for, I guess it's a few reasons. One is I'm very, very restless. I was my company that I owned for 16 years, which is not a mark of someone who's restless. But I once I left my company and I've been in London, I felt I just wanted to try something new. And also I'd been to LA a couple of times. I've been lucky to be nominated for an Emmy, and I just loved it. I loved the sun. I loved the vibe. I fell in love with it. And then when Edgar Wright got Ant-Man and said to Marvel, I want this guy to do my sound, I managed to get these job offers, and I grabbed one. I literally grabbed the bull by the horn. And that didn't happen because Edgar left the show, and I never did, and I was never involved with it. But by that point, it already served a purpose for me, which was getting me out here. So that's why I came out here, and I'm lucky to have a very supportive wife who's like, sure, let's do it. And yes, it can be very hard. My first 2 years here, I came out here with like a big Marvel movie in my back pocket and a year's worth of work. And I got here, and within 6 months, that just disappeared. And I'm like, oh yeah, all my contacts, all my directors, all my producers, all the editors I've ever worked with, are not here. So I kind of had to start from scratch. And I mean, it was a tough couple of years. Never did I consider going back to London. Someone said to me that we both know, I would rather be unsuccessful in LA than successful in London. And that always resonated with me. There's just something about Los Angeles and, you know, the mixed stages here and the studios and the whizzing around on a golf cart. Not that I do, you know, that's what happens when you visit. But there's something, you know, I still get a buzz. You know, I'm now at Warner Brothers. You know, you go through the gates and I'm like pinching myself.
Are you staff there now then at Warner's?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I'm a Warner Brothers person, but you know, it's not necessarily handcuffed. You know, I'm going to go off and mix something at Sony later on in the year, and
It's
so
it's like that, isn't it? They do tend to kind of cross-fertilize quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah. You know, the one thing I have learned, which was tough being here, and this is nothing against my employers here. You know, I went from having my own business for 16 years to being freelance to being employed in a new country. And the one thing I personally have realized is I can't deal in contracts. I can't deal with this being tied to someone for 2 years, because 3 months in my brain is a long time, and I keep changing my mind. And, you know, so I love the freeness of not being contracted to someone.
So you haven't thought about coming back?
No, I mean, I do come back. You know, I was just back there September, October, November, and a bit into December to mix 2 shows. But no, we're not coming back. I mean,
look, I mean, having experienced success in both Europe and the US, what are the main differences, just out of interest?
Politics.
But where?
Everywhere. I mean, I remember sitting with a couple of my sound crew on The World's End, which was the last thing I did before I left. And the conversation was like, tell us what it's like over there, how it's different, you know, like the Pro Tools and the sessions and that. There's no difference. I mean, there are amazing people here. There are not so amazing people here. There's amazing people in London. There's not, you know, that side of it is not that different. There's actually more people holding on to the past here, because you know, I feel like I gained 10 years moving here, because I went from being one of the older sound supervisors, you know, apart when Eddie Joseph retired, you know, there's, you know, there's people way younger than me now, but you get here and I was described as, he's a great kid, literally last year. And not that I think of myself as that at all, but you know, there are much older people doing what I do here. So I feel like I've gained 10 years biologically just by coming here. But to answer your question, the politics is very much different. I learned that, you know, like when Ant-Man didn't happen, there was a show that I sought after, kind of big budget show, and I thought I got, because the picture editor said, I'd really love you to do it. I'm going to introduce you to the director. Met the director. Last time I spoke to the director was, you're my man. I've watched your movies. You're great. Can't wait to work with you. I go home, crack open the champagne. Right, we're back on. My career's good. Never got it, because the producer said, nope, I want to use this person. Which doesn't happen in the UK. In the UK, if you've got a director, and certainly a picture editor, who says you're doing the movie, that's pretty much it. So there's a whole layer of post supervisors here, and the studio, because there's a studio thing here, which is not so prevalent in the UK. You know, and also just like I say, like in the UK, someone will say to you, what's so-and-so like? And you're brutally honest. You say they're useless, or here you don't do that. I do, and I've got myself into a lot of trouble. But there's a whole kind of, it's just a different way of working here, and I'm still getting used to it. Nearly 8 years into it, I'm getting better at it. But as my wife says, I suffer from open mouth before engaged brain syndrome.
Right.
And here, that is a much bigger problem than it is in the UK.
Yeah, but I guess, you know, that feeds into the whole cultural thing. We like to kind of play ourselves down a bit and take the piss out of ourselves, you know, but they just don't do that in the same way in America, do they?
No, and they, on the flip side, people are, I mean, you know, it's still a very, you know, you got to watch yourself, and the sharks, and, you know, like there are everywhere.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was struck when the whole Baby Driver thing happened. When the movie came out, I got so many emails from people congratulating me. This was nowhere near like the Oscars or BAFTAs, just sending me congratulatory emails. And I was like, why are you, I haven't won anything, why are you congratulating me? And there's a genuine, like, the sound community here are genuinely like, when they see something that they admire and respect, there's a definite different, the UK is not like that, you know.
No.
For all its pluses and all its negatives, we're just not that kind of society of congratulating ourselves just purely on that is a great job. And that's something that I've tried to make. When I see a movie now where I respect the sound, I seek out the sound supervisor and I try and email them, even if I don't know them, to say, hey, that's a great job. Because I think that kind of, I don't think there's enough of that.
No.
You know, that kind of you know, we are the industry itself is like, you know, well, as the director says, it's 50% of the movie. Well, it's 1 or 2% of the budget, and quite often on the credits you're way down.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's good for us to recognize that we do some amazing work. Frequently we do amazing work, and, you know, we should congratulate ourselves.
I mean, America's always been, you know, better at celebrating success, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we could certainly work from. I mean, the one thing that we were talking about was about diversity in the sound world. I mean, has the US been any more successful in attracting a diverse workforce?
No. In a word.
Okay.
It's still white dudes like, you know, like myself.
Right.
I literally know 2 black people as sound editors.
Why do you think that is?
In London, everyone's thrown in together, right? And you get on at least you get on the tube and you see, you know, Asian people, Indian people, black people, you know, so hodgepodge is like New York. I don't have a tube here. I get out of my predominantly white neighborhood into my car and get onto a lot where there's not a lot of diversity. And and I'm not saying that people are racist here. That's not what I'm saying. But I just think there is the whole thing about, you know, what's happened over the last few years, when you realize that, you know, maybe a movie with a lead black actor about a black story doesn't get nominated and Cate Blanchett does when it's a white story. Even me as a person who I really don't consider myself racist, I'm like, here, maybe there is something going on here that I hadn't even picked up on. And also it is, which is, I know your thing, I think that it's not seen as a credible industry for people of diversity. I've done a few things where when I see the opportunity, I'm trying to get these people in, because my message to them, if I can do it, you know, they can do it. I mean, it's also just race. There's just not a lot of females. I'm told that there is a massive push from, and whether this is true, but I have heard there is an edict that on every Marvel movie, you have to have a female mixer.
That's great.
And I've certainly been told as a mixer, sorry, they don't want to, you're not going to get an interview. They want a woman. I can think of 4 female mixers here. I'm sure there's many more. You know, and the ones that you got to succeed. You got to be like, my God, that's all power to you. So it is still very much white men here.
I mean, without the positive discrimination, how does it change? That's the thing.
Well, this is it, and that's kind of why I'm like, fair enough. There has to be some kind of seismic push and shift in the needle, otherwise it's just going to continue being this kind of, you know.
Circling the dream.
how important do you think, I mean, having had an education in sound yourself, how important do you think it is for people coming in at entry level to have had some kind of formal training?
I should preface this with I'm not an authoritarian on this because over here there's the whole union thing. So you can't, in England, you can just, someone says, can I just come and be the tea person for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and they get like a very low wage. You can't do that here because they've got to be part of the union.
Okay.
So it's a different thing. Like I have people saying, I'd love to come and work with you. I'm like, I can't, because you've got to be in the union. So that's a whole different thing. But to your point, I don't think it's worth anything at all. I mean, it helps if you know how to use Pro Tools. If you know you can cut on Pro Tools, obviously that's a great thing. And I know there are courses. I only learned out last week about, someone said they're on Pro Tools level, whatever. There's a thing, right, which I had no idea about. So in that regard, that's great. But as I said to this person, when they said to me, you know, they were talking about doing their masters, I guess it was. And I said to them, I don't think that's going to help you at all, because what you learn, I can teach my kids. I have a 10 and 12-year-old son. I can teach them to use Pro Tools like in a month if I sat down with them, and, you know, but the craft of what you do within the Pro Tools is the thing that I'm still learning 30 years on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't learn that. That's not something that an academic can teach you, unless that academic. Now here it's slightly different. People like me retire and then they go and teach at USC. Okay. You know, I know people who've, like, you know, supervised amazing, massive blockbuster movies that I watched when I was, like, you know, 15 and gone, oh my God, I wish I could do that. They are teaching at USC. So maybe it's different here, but I'm sure, I think, like you probably think like I do, there's nothing replaces the experience of working with people who do this day in, day out, and just sitting with people, and even just, you know, looking at the current sessions and seeing how stuff, you know.
It's how much you learn and how quickly you learn it when you're in that kind of that in the kitchen, as it were, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there's over here, there's still a raft of, you know, I came from England where I was working with people who are like, because we had to be in England, we had to be like, crews weren't big. And I think it's fair to say we used to, in England, I still count myself as a we, over in the UK, there was what the US sound community was doing, and then there was us. That was definitely the case. And then around the time of, like, you know, when Eddie took over the Bonds, and the, you know, Harry Potters, we, you know, shot up, and without a doubt it's, you know, of the same standard. But we came from a background where the budgets weren't as big and the crews weren't as big, and we had to be quick and fast. Now that is definitely more the case here now. The 8 years since I've been here has shifted so much, seismic shift in budgets and time frames and crews, and, you know, but there are still people here who are holding on and are not proficient on Pro Tools at all, which you don't seem. I think that those people fell by the wayside in the UK 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And here that's still kind of going on, but yeah, you've got to be, the days of, like, sound supervisors who just tell people what to do and aren't doing it, they are rapidly disappearing. So I'm not talking about anyone specifically. And that's where I've potentially done okay over here, because I'm a Swiss Army knife. I can do some design, I can supervise, I can mix the effects, I can mix the dialogue, I can do them all pretty well. And so I don't want anyone to employ me because I'm a cheap option. I want them to employ me because I'm great. I hope they think I'm great at what I do. But equally, there is a budget line that we all try and make it work. And if you can maximize what you're doing for the buck, then that obviously helps as well.
Circling the Dream.
One interesting question that I think people love to know: what's the best bit of advice anyone ever gave you when you were coming into this?
this isn't when I was coming into it. This was when I was at Hacks, and our studio manager said something to me, which I don't always adhere to. And this is so simple. I don't always adhere to, but I try to. And it was, don't worry about it until it happens. I can look at my calendar for the year and either be like stressing, like I have been beginning of this year, because there's no work, and I'm like, oh my God, my my career is dead, or there's so many shows and they're all overlapping, and no point stressing about it until it actually happens. And it's the same with in general with I start Temp Mix on Saturday, 4 days. It's a complete reworking of the sound design. Director's not heard a single thing. I could stress about it if I wanted to right now, but there is just no point. Just have confidence in what you're doing. Have a vision for what you're doing. I mean, this is my advice to people coming into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Be a good person. It's aptitude and attitude. I don't want to work with someone who's amazing but an asshole, or lazy, and I don't want to work with someone who's not great but a lovely person. I want someone who's both.
Mm-hmm.
I want someone who's quick, fast, great at what they do, a lovely person, will take direction, will add something to the creative process, all of those things. So I think people should aim to be the best that they can be, and also just be good people, because that does.
The
great thing about here, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK, the cream does rise to the top. The cream definitely does rise to the top. So just be as good, be great. Don't be average, be as great as you can be.
Circling the Dream.
So Kit, I mean, are you a bit of a Kit monster, or are you a bit of a Luddite?
I guess I'm somewhere in between the two. I'm not one of these people who are like, someone can have a conversation about speakers and talk about the BM41 or whatever, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I know generally what makes a speaker, what manufacturers I like, and I know my ears know what they like,
mm-hmm.
but I'm not a technical person in that degree. I try not to rely too much on the convoluted chains of plugins and stuff, but there are some plugins that I now absolutely must have. I'm with plugins. When I discover something that is of use to me, I want to hold on to it for sure. But I'm not that kind of person who's all about the kit, I have to say. I don't believe I am.
Do you have a favorite plugin, or have you got something that you just think, oh my God, I'd struggle so much without that?
Well, I use all the Fab Filter stuff, and then there's this Oak Sound.
Oh yeah,
I've just discovered recently in the last year Soothe, which is just amazing, just across my dialogues, which just helps no end. And then there's Spiff. So so and obviously Isotope, if you're doing. And a new thing I've just discovered, actually, me saying about I'm not do you know about this Soundflow?
No.
I'm convinced in the next 3 or 4 years we are all going to be using it. It's this pay monthly quick key thing called Soundflow that you pay your $10 a month, you log in, and then it's a hotkey thing that you works with. You know what Stream Deck is?
No.
Stream Deck is it's a LED.
I'm feeling a bit old-fashioned here.
Right, that's it there. But essentially, you can create your own quick keys, but the power of it, and to a quick key to do anything, but then you can just download. They've got like an RX package, and so you just download it, and as soon as you open up Pro Tools, you have a button that says "Send to RX." So you select a clip, send to RX, and then those 3, 6, 9, 15 keys explode into a new set of D-click, D-hum, D whatever, and then it goes even further. You can just have one key that, if you've got a setting for dialogue isolate, like I do, I like to dialogue isolate, but not too much. You can then literally just select loads of stuff, hit one key, and it will go through, do it all in the separate regions, and then put it back. So it can save you so much, and it can do anything. So check it out, because it literally is for anyone
Cool.
who spends day in, day out doing their work. I think it's the possibility of saving them like a day a week of repetitive. It's
Wow.
insane.
Okay.
And then
I'll check it
it's
out.
got loads of different things for automation and they've just released a new version where you don't even need the Stream Deck. You can do it on your iPad and have as many quick keys as you want. You're not even limited, but each quick key can then open up a folder. So you hit iZotope, and that one tab blooms out into loads of iZotope functions. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Okay, I'm going to check it out.
That was not a paid advertisement for
No, I
Sound.
know, but it's interesting when you went, oh, I'm not really into kit, and then like, oh my
Yeah,
God, yeah,
well,
that's kinda-
it's like iZotope. Like iZotope, when you first get into it, you're like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
game-changing stuff. This is another game-changing thing for just speed of, because we're all up against the gun.
Yeah.
We're all up against the gun.
Circling the dream.
Okay, so moving away from kit, what about sound heroes? Who's your all-time or maybe current kind of hero in sound? Who do you just admire their work so much?
I think Jimmy Boyle is one.
Oh yeah.
I loved you. I mean, I in fact, there's so many. The guys who work for me, I respect them like a huge amount, because they do stuff like Ben Meachan, Jeremy Price, Jimmy Boyle. The stuff that they do, and Dan Morgan, the stuff that they do, I gasp at. And when they're doing it for me, it's obviously.
But you're still working with them, even though you're over there, yeah?
Well, not Jimmy so much, but I do all of Edgar's movies are posted in the UK. So, I'm still working with, I just had Ben working for me and Jeremy working for me and Dan working with me, because familiarity is obviously a powerful tool.
Yeah.
When you know what people can do and what their strengths are, and you have that connection, it makes life a lot easier. So, those people are my heroes. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but it's true. And I guess then you look at people like Ben Burt, who I've been meaning to, he doesn't know me, but I feel like emailing him and just saying, you don't know me, but any chance we can meet up? Because, watching that documentary many years ago in some way had an influence to me sitting here right now. So I'd love to meet him and just, chew the fat with him.
Yeah, my experience of especially the guys in the States is if you reach out, they'll almost always speak to you, give you some time.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking with Nigel Heath when we came here for the Emmy, being struck by, we'd be having a tour around Sony or whatever, and they'd be dubbing some big movie, and someone knock on the door and say, "Hey, some guys from England, can we come in and have a look?" And they'd be like, "Sure, come in," and they'd have a chat, and whereas in the UK we're a bit more like, "Not now, we're busy," and there is a very, I'm doing a class. I'm doing like a Zoom meeting with some people from Edinburgh tomorrow. My email seems to be out there for people to contact me, and I try as much as I can to reply to people, because if I can have any influence, even just like as advice for people, if I can do it, you can do it. I genuinely mean. And so if I can try and inspire people, even just some words of, I say wisdom with tongue in cheek, because I don't know if it is wisdom, but my experience, I certainly have experience.
Yeah.
So I'm all for trying to pass on, pay it forward a bit.
Yeah, well, I think as you were saying, watching the Ben Burt thing, it had an effect on you, and you can have the same effect on other people.
I know, and I trust me, dude. I don't class myself as Ben Burt at all.
No.
But when I speak to someone and they're nervous because they want to get into sound, or they're getting into sound, and they're like, "Oh my god," it kind of blows my mind, because my wife would just laugh. She's like, "If only they really knew what you're like." But
I've got a few stories there as well.
yeah, I know. You know, I went past your front door in October, and I looked at it, and I'm still ashamed.
Oh, don't be ashamed. It's still there.
Yeah, but I think it is important to, and you know, this girl that I'm speaking to up in Scotland, she's doing this film course. She wants to get into sound design, and she's like, but what the hell do I do? How the hell can I get out of this? There's nothing up in Scotland. And I'm like, well, what you need to do is you'll need to go down to London and you'll need to do this. And I don't want to tell what to do, but I wouldn't do your masters. I'd spend a year running and whatever. And she says to me afterwards, she emails me and she says, you've just energized me so much. I feel like I'm like, her teachers want her, because of COVID, they're supposed to, you know, shoot a short film and she's supposed to do the sound. That may not happen. They want her to write a paper. And I said, you should, and this is what I'm going to speak to them tomorrow, do a 5-minute audio piece. Do a 5-minute audio story piece. You don't need, you can just get in front of a microphone and paint a story with sound. Do that. And she said to me afterwards, she's like, you've energized me. You know, I've talked to her twice, and both times you can tell that she's like, I want to get to here. I am way down here. How the hell am I going to get to here? And just by talking to me, she feels like there is at least some form of inspiration and a kickstart to the energy of doing such a thing. And in her course of 30 people, there are 3 people who want to be in sound. Because she said, would you give a talk to the class? I said, just the 3 who want to be sound designers, fuck the others, jokingly. But you're right, you know, like, it's hard for me. It's not all roses. Sound is not all roses, and it can be tough, and it's getting tougher with budgets, etc. But if that's what you want to do, there's not a huge amount of people doing it, right? Yeah. And certainly in the UK, there's got to be 40 people in London. I'm talking in the feature, in that top, you know, tier of feature films. If that's what they want to get into, there's probably like 40 people. Here there's like 300. But that's still the plus.
Not a lot, is it? You know?
No, it's not a lot. You know, and then obviously you've got TV, and then there's the whole Netflix and the thing, and which is a whole other discussion. But that's the good news. You know, if you're a bit of luck, a lot of talent, and clever about what you're doing, it is possible.
Circling the dream.
So if you had to choose one piece of work, what would you say you're most proud of?
I'm most proud of, I don't know, it's a hard one. That I'm proud of them all for different reasons. Some more than others, but you know, obviously the Edgar stuff I'm proud of, because just the stuff that me and the team do is some cool stuff, and he's the kind of director that just keeps pushing you. So obviously Edgar as a director, and he's who I've got the longest working relationship with now, since Shaun of the Dead, which is like, I've come out for 20 years, a bit less. So I'm proud of all his stuff. In fact, even the movie we just finished that isn't now out until the end of the year, you know, there's stuff in there that, you know, me and the sound crew are just very proud of.
Cool. I mean, clearly you've always got on well with Edgar. Have any directors that you found more challenging?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? Because you're locked in a room with these people.
Well, you know, I thankfully it's not. It's an exception when there's a director who's an a-hole. And
are we thinking of the same person?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important, possibly, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. You know, I've just taken over this show from a guy who got fired on Friday, and I said you know, it happens to possibly all of us at one point, right? Mm. For whatever reason, right? And sometimes it's not their fault. And you know, I was very careful to say to him, this has happened to me, dude. It doesn't mean anything, no reflection on you at all. It's just sometimes there's a director who, for whatever reason, wants to blame someone, you know, maybe, you know, and it's a tough thing as a sound supervisor. When people say to me, what's your role as a sound supervisor? I say, well, it's to plug into a sensibility as quickly as possible. I remember I landed from Baby Driver on a Friday night, had a weekend of like, oh my God, I've just done this amazing thing. I can tackle anything. Monday morning started Jumanji, which was director I'd never worked with, picture editor I'd never worked with, whose sound sensibilities were 180 degrees away from what Edgar had done. Not wrong, but you got to plug into that very quickly, because if you start playing stuff, you can play stuff once and the director says, that's not what I'm thinking. The next time round, if it's not pretty damn close, then that whole confidence thing starts to go, and you know. So possibly because I've got a great CV, that battle of having confidence of a director is a little easier now than it used to be, because, you know, quite often if I'm going to be interviewed, they've already seen my CV, they probably like my CV, and if I'm not an arsehole in the interview, you're probably going to get the job. I'll hang on those words, but so there's a confidence there anyway. You know, I've now got a body of work that is pretty cool for different reasons. You know, there's like Jumanji, there's Baby Driver, there's Girl with a Pearl Earring, there's In Bruges, there's a load. It's not just one thing. So hopefully there's a confidence thing there anyway that helps. You know, but yeah, there are.
In Bruges is one of my favorite films.
In Bruges.
Oh, that's great.
So, but yeah, I've had an experience here last year where I worked with a director who was like, literally on one day was like, you're the best. I can't believe I'm working with you. You're amazing. And then I was let go the next day.
Wow.
Which is a big conversation.
It happens, you know.
You know, it does happen.
You just move on.
And I'm probably brutally honest by saying that. Most people wouldn't even admit it, but I think it's important. When I tell young people, I tell anyone, when I start a movie, I'm full of self-doubt and I don't know if I can do it. And, you know, it doesn't get any easier for me. I'm not, after 30 years and where I am, I'm not like, this is a cakewalk, I can do it. Every movie, I get nervous and a little bit panicky, and because I put pressure on myself.
Yeah, I want you on your game, doesn't it? You know. Yeah,
it does. You know, so I guess, you know, again, advice for young people is, like for me, is don't, if you get nervous or when you start that first job or when you first start that first thing, nerves are good, and you know that's not a bad thing.
So look, imagine there's someone watching this who kind of thinks, oh, you know, I never really thought about sound. I haven't really paid much attention. If you were going to guide someone to a piece of work in the cinema that would persuade them of the power of sound in cinema, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Well, I would actually I would turn that around slightly. I would suggest going to see most movies and thinking about the sound.
Okay.
Because, you know, once we all open up again in the cinema, which looks like it's happening, I think they're talking about opening up the cinemas here next week, which is amazing.
Wow.
You know, there's amazing sound work everywhere, you know, and certainly, you know, those blockbuster movies, if you think about what you're hearing as opposed to just, and I can do it too, I can just sit there and be spoon-fed and not think about it, and you start appreciating the choices that have been made editorially and both mix-wise, it helps you kind of, you know, I never stop. I used to, not so much in the last couple of years, but I could watch a movie that someone had a sound supervisor in London had done over here, and be depressed for the next week. And Joe would be like, that's my wife, anyone's watching, she'd be like, what the hell's the matter with you? I'm like, I wish I could do something that good, you know. So point being, you can learn a lot and understand someone else's work a lot just by watching movie. Not necessarily any particular movie, but just any movie. There's cool stuff that you can learn from.
Good. Yeah, well, I would agree with that. I mean, there is so much just out there. It's that's fantastic. I mean, I'm watching some of these Scandi dramas on TV and just thinking, I love how sparse it is. I love how brave. I love it when people don't throw everything on it. You know, it's like simple. It's really,
and a good soundtrack isn't necessarily just your crash bang wallop stuff.
No.
It can be something that's extremely simple as well, as long as it's done very well. There's tasteful stuff in every genre of movie and soundtrack.
Circling the Dream.
So look, assuming that you're still enjoying your job, what do you see for the next 10 years? You know, where does it go from here? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I love mixing, and I'd love just to concentrate on that a bit more. I mean, the aim of the game is to earn some money to keep your family safe. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally want to be well respected by my peers and the people who work for me, and then the filmmakers and the directors. You know, I just want to be known for doing some good stuff. You know, I don't want to take over the world. I think what you're hinting at is like, would I go out and do my own business here? Like, sometimes I've thought about it, and then I think of how it was when I had my own business, and I certainly don't want to do it. I love the freedom of, like, when I mix, you earn pretty good money.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about mixing is once you leave that mixing board, you can't do anything. You cannot do anything until you rock up the next day. There's no, like, when you're supervising, it's like, okay, now we've got to think about getting the ADR ready, and you know, as I'm discovering again on this job, you know, like it's not a 9 to 7 thing. Whereas mixing it is. And certainly if you're a business owner, you know, I think of being a business owner in COVID. I mean, I can't imagine what it's been like for you.
Look at my hair.
Yeah. So I don't think I just want to continue doing some good stuff over here. And if I can, I would love to walk a line of doing cool, interesting, lower budget stuff, and the kind of Jumanji type bigger stuff. If I can walk that line between doing, I'd be very happy. And like I say, I feel like the Baby Driver thing, like, for me, my career will always be before and after Baby Driver, like, without a doubt. It changed so much for me. And all of a sudden, people here were like, they knew who I was, even though I've been here for 5 years. And I like the respect and the kudos that comes with that. Not because it's a big, I like if I can inspire other people, like the likes of Ben Burt inspired me, I mean, that would be amazing.
But it was an outstanding bit of work. I mean, you really should be very proud of it. I mean, you were sound designer and mixer on that, weren't you?
Yeah, sound designer, supervisor. Yeah, you know, and obviously team effort, but it was like the only time in my career where I have regularly reviewed stuff with the boys in the cutting room, like my crew, and getting goosebumps. Just like, my God, this is, you know. And I still get it. I still, you know, I go to I turn up at a new studio that I haven't mixed at, and someone will say to me, the mix tech will say, "You do Baby Driver, right?" And they'll go, "Oh my God," it's like, you know. So that's like lightning in a bottle. That's like lightning in a bottle. I had someone the year afterwards say to me, "I want to come and work with you. I want to be you know, I want to be, you know, the next Julian Slater. I want to do The Baby Driver. And I said,
Mhm.
like, dude, those movies come around once if you're lucky, you get them once in your career, right? That doesn't happen twice or three times in a career. That's just, you know, so don't try and be the next person, don't look for the next Baby Driver, because it's not gonna happen.
You got an Oscar nomination for that, didn't you?
Two, thank you very much. I always like to correct everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well done. I thought it was a fantastic film. And,
Yeah,
you know, it wasn't just a fantastic film. It was a fantastic sound film, you know. It really
yeah.
was.
I'm very proud of it, you know, and obviously that's Edgar. This is a true story. I was at a BAFTA screening one Saturday morning at some place somewhere, and this is like, I don't know how many years ago now, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and I went to the bathroom, and Edgar's in there, and he'd been at the screening, and he said to me, "Oh, Baby Driver's definitely happening. It's definitely happening." He said, "It's your Oscar nomination," and he was right.
Yeah.
You know,
You
so
know these things that far ahead, though, don't you?
yeah, so, you know, I played my part, but it's Edgar's vision and Edgar's genius that brought the nomination, I'm sure.
Well, hey, look, I've taken up an hour of your time. I'm really grateful for the time you've given me, and for speaking to people out there who can really
Bless you.
benefit from that kind of experience. And let's hope that somehow between us, can you hear my wife sneezing?
I'm saying bless you, but I don't think she can hear.
Yeah, well, you've probably heard all of her cooking noises as well, which is makes it more interesting. But look, if somehow you know, we can encourage someone who in 30 years time says, "I saw that thing of Julian Slater."
Yeah, totally.
In the sand, you know. All right, dude. Thank you very much.
All right, mate. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And I hope
we'll
speak again soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers, dude.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
So that was Julian. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please check out some of the other interviews on the channel. There's going to be quite a few more coming up over the next couple of months. If there's anyone in particular that you'd like me to try and speak to, let me know. I'll do my best to get hold of them. The next show in this series is Eddie Joseph. Eddie Joseph is one of the legends of the sound editorial world. And if you haven't come across him before, you really should catch the interview. He's worked on pretty much every film that you've ever enjoyed. So make sure you catch that, hit subscribe, hit notifications, hit like, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.